I've never really heard the definition of intrusive thoughts, but I think I would win the Oscar. Are you kidding? My imagination is so big. Constant intrusive thoughts. I'm telling you, I would beat everyone for Oscars every single year with my intrusive thoughts. They've really kept me prisoner. Heal Squad, we are back with part 2 of our incredible conversation with Nicole Russell Wharton, an author, certified trauma-informed healing instructor. If you guys missed part 1, please go back and check it out. Nicole shared her life-changing battle with endometriosis and everything that she went through and how she's fighting for her health every single day. But today, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. It's her expertise. It's what she helps people with every day, and that is generational trauma. If you have ever felt like you are carrying pain that is not yours, or you're struggling with health issues you didn't know existed in your family, you are not alone, and there's good news. You can break the cycle. Nicole's going to tell us how. So Heal Squad, let's get into it. Nicole, in part 1, we kind of ended the conversation talking about you needing a you for you. And I think it's hard when you're the one always helping people. It's hard to ask for help, and it's hard to kind of admit that. So was that a process for you, or did you just declare it and move forward?
You know what? It was something that was difficult for me to admit to other people. It wasn't hard for me to be honest with myself. And so I sought therapy. It was something I had taken a break on. And I knew that I needed to get back into sessions and start talking to um, someone that I wouldn't be adding more of a burden to, which was my other fear of being honest with my family and friends. They were already carrying so much, trying to pour into me and love me. And I just didn't want to add to that.
I
I
get
had
it.
this guilt around not wanting to make things harder for anyone. But I
And
was
when
like,
you
you know
need
what?
help a lot, that's the thing that like people don't understand. When you've gone through so many things and it's like you got to go to the well again and again and again. I recently said something to a friend. I go, I never thought I was going to be this person that needed people all the freaking time.
Yeah. Yeah. And even that was a hard adjustment for me, like learning how to ask for support, and how to tell people what I need, and what's working and what's not working. And we can go back to that, but even that was a difficult thing for me to navigate, figuring out, like, what are my preferred forms of support? What does that look like? And so I felt like I was getting enough and I didn't want to ask for more. And therapy played a big role in me taking the next step. And so as I was doing therapy and we were talking through, my healing and my physical challenges, something came up in therapy, and it was centered around my childhood trauma that I was struggling with as well. And so I ended up going taking this deep dive into like this full body healing experience, and that's kind of where this book began, Breaking Generational Silence. I was on this quest of total healing, and I recognized that total healing meant not just dealing with the things that I could remember and the things that triggered me, but dealing with some of the things in my DNA that I knew, or that I now know are there, and some things that I may not know are there. And so, with a lot of different specialist support, I was able to not only go on this journey of healing, but to call in community and welcome my family to join me and do this work with me.
Wow. So how did you get to a place, because you were working in trauma, but were you working in generational trauma at the time of your kind of epiphanies about this?
Yeah, so a lot of my work is really centered around inspiring and empowering young people to be the change. And so the cycle breakers that I work with are young people who are ending the cycle of poverty or ending the cycle of foster care. I work with teen moms and young adults who are becoming mothers for the first time, and we work through the and we help them to ensure that that's not passed on to the children that they're creating. Never in my work did I really center things around looking back and helping our elders, helping the people who are still alive or the people who have impacted us and, passed on this pain. And so it's because never in my work had I really recognized the power and ability that we have to do that. So everything that I was doing was so centered around self and what we can do and how we can guide the younger generation. And when I learned that endometriosis is something that is passed down, it's a genetic disease. When I learned that that is something that I most likely got from my grandmother, that's when I recognized that there was more healing that needed to be done, not just for the young ones, but for my elders. And I wanted to support not just the women in my family, but all of those that are living that may be struggling and dealing with any type of disease or illness or generational pain.
So I want you to explain what that looks like, but I also want you to explain what generational trauma is.
Yes. So generational trauma is a cycle of passing on these painful experiences from generation to generation. My work now is centered around communication and generational silence. Generational silence encompasses a lack of communication or avoiding specific topics for a minimum of 2 generations. And so with generational silence, it could be violence, it could be finances, it could be religion, relationships. There's a huge range of topics and information that could be avoided within families. And so, my work now through the foundation and with this new book is trying to encourage people to have the conversations that are needed to not only support, but to save people.
So, the way I've learned about generational stuff, um, I think it was Judy Wilkins Smith we had on the show that talked about this. Are you familiar with her?
No.
Oh, she does really great work with this too. It's almost like the cells are passed through the women, right? Like the grandmother's carrying, my grandmother carried my mom, the cells were passed through her.
No.
And then those cells get passed on to me, and then those cells get passed on to my baby. So the cells that were affected, if there was like molestation, sexual abuse, whatever, like all of that gets passed down. And we don't know. Like I started realizing, like, why do I feel like something happened to me when I was younger, but I know nothing happened? Or at least I think I know nothing happened. And that's when I started realizing, oh, it's probably in these other generations. And so I started doing some homework and started learning some things. So that was an explanation that really kind of helped me identify like, oh, I could be feeling stuff that has nothing to do with my personal individual experience. This is my mom's, my grandma's, her mother's. And it's fascinating work, actually.
Yeah. It's epigenetics.
Yeah.
It's this ability for traumatic experiences to be passed down through our genes and in our DNA from generation to generation. And so I think that is why it's really important to have good communication within families, whether it's around the most simple and basic storytelling that could happen at a dinner table or on a walk. It's We really need to encourage our elders and all of the people who are still here while they're here to share as much of their experiences as possible. Because if we're carrying the same DNA, we're carrying some of those experiences. Um, in this book, I break it down into 3 sections. There's my mother's tears, my father's silence, and then the section that's focused on me, and it's speak or repeat. And my
Whoa.
mother's tears, that was the section that I really focused on for quite some time, because there were questions that as a child, it would have been very inappropriate for me to ask. But now, as a woman, and having a relationship with my mother where there's a friendship, I can ask questions like, Mom, what type of pain did you experience? And what type of fears did you experience when you were pregnant with me? Did you cry a lot? Did you
Mm.
experience postpartum depression? What did that look like? These are things I never even thought to ask until I started recognizing how much we have in common, the women in my family, and how we're all kind of sharing these tears. I say in the book, it's kind of like when I see my mother cry, it's watching these tears fall from a river full of the tears of my elders, and seeing all of the generations' pain pouring out through her eyes. And so I know that her sensitivity, her vulnerability, it doesn't just start with her. You know, she's carrying so much from the women that came before her.
Wow. So now, once you started to identify those things, what happened with you?
That's a good question. I think I started to understand myself better. And I started to accept things about myself that I can't change, and that I needed to love a bit more. You know, there's a sense of fragility that I've always had. And some people have told me that it's a negative thing, that it's a weakness. And as I've learned and understood my mother more, I've started to recognize it's actually my strength. And it is my power that enables me to be so empathetic. And in return, that allows me to do this work where I'm able to sit in front of children and hear and feel everything that they're experiencing and pour back into them, because I recognize that that is what they're lacking. So, it's actually empowered me in so many ways to have conversations about my mother's tears, and even ask questions about her mother's tears, which she was afraid to ask. um, Storytelling, she can only share what she experienced and what she thought was happening,
Mhm.
but she doesn't have a clear picture as to the why.
This is why it's so important, like you said, to have these conversations. What, tell me about your dad's silence.
Whew. Yes. My dad's silence, um, it's interesting because I grew up in a single parent home with my father, and it was a very quiet home. My dad went through depression for at least 12 years, and the house was a place where we did not talk about feelings, we did not talk about experiences. Um, there was minimal conversation being had, and that was the norm. And so, when I started doing this work and I knew that I wanted to connect with my father on a deeper level, I knew there would be challenges and I would have to take a different approach with him. Um, I was not certain that he would open up to me, but if he wasn't, I had plans to kind of go around him and to talk to people who knew him, and talk to, siblings and cousins and aunts and uncles that were still alive. And so with my father, I learned that going in and asking open-ended questions is not going to work. I'm going to get shut down immediately. And so the approach that I took, to tackle my father's silence, was bringing information to him. And so I started doing all of this research about my family history, DNA testing, pulling up public records and finding death certificates. And um, I would call my dad or text him and say, "Hey, did you know so and this happened to so and so?" Or, this person had children that passed away from this disease, or, from heart disease. And that was how I kind of opened the door and called him in. And so his responses would often lead to more meaningful conversation because sometimes he didn't know and he would share what he thought or what he was told. And he was, in a sense, really grateful that I was giving him more insight into experiences for the family members that he hadn't had that type of communication with to know more about. Um, so a lot of our work really started there with me just providing information and like sharing things with my dad that I wanted him to know. And he ended up being very grateful for it. And he was able to feel comfortable enough to open up and share some things with me in return.
Wow. It was your mom's tears, your dad's silence, and the third one was
Speak or repeat.
speak or
And
repeat.
so
Okay.
that was the section where I really like had to do the work on myself. Like, okay, you've gathered the stories, um, you understand the timelines, you understand the struggles. Now, what are you going to do? And so, in my line of work, and I think you can relate to this as well, Maria, it's like we can heal, but who does our healing work benefit? We're not doing all of this very difficult work just for ourselves. And so I had to figure out, in what way do I want to communicate what I've learned? In what ways do I want to pass things down? I started journaling outside of writing books. I started journaling and just writing down things that I wanted people to find when I'm no longer here. Whether that was about my health and different symptoms or experiences that I had in the hospital. Um, I started writing more. Um, I started allowing myself to experience joy more than I was previously. And it's because in my line of work, I'm constantly giving and pouring into other people. And so I'm often trying to set the tone of being a calm energy and giving people a space to feel safe. Um, and in doing so, I found that I was not walking into the room with a vibrant energy. I was not offering my highest vibrations because I didn't want to overwhelm anyone. And so I had to tell myself that it's not enough just to pour into others in that way. You can set the tone, you can give high vibrations, and they can be contagious. And if they're not, that's okay, but allow someone the opportunity to catch your high vibe. And so, centering my joy and focusing on my joy is one of the ways in which I am breaking generational trauma.
Wow. I love that. We're going to take a short break here, friends. Easter is right around the corner, and it is one of my favorite holidays. If you are Greek, you understand, because in the Greek culture, Easter is Christmas. I mean, it's the biggest of the big. So we always have big family celebrations at our house, but with such a big group, there's a lot of prep that goes into it, which is why I love having Macy's as my go to for Easter. It's got everything we need from the floral dresses to the little shoes I'm going to get Athena to hosting essentials, the beautiful table linens, the baskets, so much more. I really want to get some of those retro Smeg electric kettles in Robin's Egg Blue. I think it's so cute. It'll be perfect to serve tea from. Let's not forget Easter looks, right? You got to dress the part. Macy's has so many cute dresses that I am eyeballing for Athena. I'm currently eyeing my own flowy dress right now from One State, which is a definite spring must have. I'm probably going to pick up some little kitten heels because those are really cool right now. And I hate wearing heels. A kitten heel is perfect. So that will be my shoe for this dress. But be sure, friends, to shop in store or online at Macy's.com through Easter, April 20th. I've also linked these Easter looks that I'm mentioning and more in my wish list. I hope you guys enjoy. Happy early Easter. Let's see. We've talked about those three things. What are the key things people should ask themselves about their lineage when it comes to their physical and mental health, you think?
Yeah, I think so. When it comes to the physical health, I think one of the best things we can learn is what were the causes of death of the generations before me.
Ooh, not
And
what they had,
oftentimes,
but what the death was due to.
yes.
Oh my God. I just did a whole family tree for Athena. I finished my mom's side and I don't know if I focused on that. I focused on what everybody had. I think I wrote what they died of, but most people are so, well, we don't really know. It was like,
Yeah, and I mean, I stumbled on a lot of roadblocks when I was doing this work. I can't tell you how many people died of natural causes in their sleep, right? And so I
well,
think
that's nice.
that's why it's really important to know what they struggled with while they were alive as
Mhm.
well. So, understanding what were the health concerns of your elders. Once you know that, it can, if you allow it, play a major impact on how you live your life, on what you eat, how often you see the doctor, what type of screenings you do. I think it really can empower you to be proactive to make sure that you don't have similar experiences or that you can be more preventative and get ahead of things, if you will. So it's very important to have conversations around health in general, with your parents if you are privileged to do so, or any of your elders. And then I think the same thing with mental health. Mental health, there is still this stigma, and so a lot of people are doing mental health work quietly. We go to our therapist, we learn what we learn, we keep it to ourselves, and we do the work. And we have to normalize having conversations about our mental struggles and challenges, at the dinner table. And not only talking to our children about it, but talking to our parents about it. I was the first generation within my family to get a diagnosis of ADHD, but I'm not the first person in my family to have ADHD. And so
Hmm.
when I received my diagnosis, I remember it being like an aha moment for my mom and dad, because they're like, oh, well, maybe you got that from me. That it sounds like I have that too. And so, I asked, well, will you go do the test? Will you do testing for it to get a real evaluation? And they're like, I don't need to. What do I need to do that for? I'm not in school anymore. Um, but for me, I didn't do it because I was in school. I did it so that I could advocate for myself better. I found that having ADHD was impacting my friendships, my relationships. I was often very forgetful or absent-minded. And so people would, question whether or not I care deeply for them. And for me, I'm like, no, I love you. I just can't remember what you said, or maybe I was distracted. So being able to explain to people that I had ADHD honestly helped strengthen some of my relationships. And so, I try to encourage my family to do the same. Once we understand the
Mhm.
struggles that we have, it's not like, we're saying that we're incapable of trying, which I always will. And I will always be honest with people about, when I am struggling, but I want people to know that it's harder for me to do it. It's harder for me to stay focused. It's harder for me to remember, but I am trying.
Mhm.
And this is the reason why. So I definitely encourage people to, while it can be embarrassing, and it requires a lot of vulnerability, to be honest with each other about what we're struggling with, because we're all struggling with something.
Mhm. Oh my gosh.
Everyone is dealing with something.
Yes. That's the thing we never really think about, and we feel so alone, and yet we are so not. I was at a meditation event for Dr. Joe Dispenza. Are you familiar with his work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was there this weekend, and I'm looking around the room, and there's 5,000 people, and everyone's in pain. Everyone is there because they have pain that they need to heal, that they need to get past. And so I remember looking around and being like, okay, it's not just me, it's all of us. We're all in this together. I also remember a moment where I was interviewing someone for the Today Show, and he was talking about anxiety, and he was listing all the traits of somebody with anxiety. And I was like, in my head, in the interview, holy shit, I think this is me. Because I never knew what it was. It was just who I was. And then at some point it connected and I go, oh, both of my parents have high anxiety. No wonder this was my environment. This is what I was around. My mom lost her first baby on Christmas, full term, strangled by the umbilical cord. So the whole time she carried me, she was in terror that she was going to lose me. I have that. That's in me. So when my baby was in uterus, and not mine because I had a surrogate, anytime that thought would come in, I'm like, not my story, not my story, not my story. Because I was like, I am not bringing this in. But it does, that information helps you understand, okay, this makes sense. I get it. And now what do I do with this? And just coincidentally, I did the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations, and within 3 days, my anxiety went away. And this weekend when I was there, he was so funny. He was talking about the research that they've done and how people lose their anxiety in 3 days. I go, wait, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know I was doing it for that reason. It was just a byproduct of me doing this. But yeah, once you understand, I think there's like a level of like relief and because you just get it. You get why, and then you're like, okay, now what can I do with this?
Yeah. The awareness, that's like so spot on. Um, you cannot advocate for anything really unless you are informed.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my line of work, I'm constantly advocating for the needs of other people because their needs are always being shared with me. In order to advocate for ourselves, we have to understand what our needs are and be honest about what we're feeling. I mean, you probably had those symptoms of anxiety and maybe suppressed them and just didn't think about it, or,
White knuckled
told
it.
yourself, yeah, yeah, for so long. And, me being aware of my mother's anxiety has actually allowed me to be more present and understanding when I'm having a moment, because, and I'm sure many people can relate to this, but when I'm in the car with my husband and he's driving and I'm in the passenger seat, I am having anxiety like 70% of the trip. And so I'm able to calm myself down because I can see, signs of my mother. I can see my mother
Mm-hmm.
in that seat with me. And I have to just tell myself nothing's going to happen. He's in control and everything is fine. And we'll get through this. And I don't need to, drive from the passenger. We're good.
Yeah.
But it's
I
not easy.
remember my mom used to have a brake on her side, her imaginary brake. She would be so panicked. And then when I get scared with Kevin, I've just learned to get numb. I'm like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So I've like let it go. But yeah, when you're aware, you can make decisions. But otherwise, you
Yes.
think you're crazy and you struggle. I mean, I did. I would get upset with myself, like, what's wrong with me? And then when you realize, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. This is just what I've learned and experienced and has been embedded in me. And now I just have to kind of see how I can unwind this. And maybe you can't unwind it all. Maybe you have to just figure out coping mechanisms and tools to live with it. But
Yeah.
it definitely helps to have that awareness.
And yeah, and that's okay. I mean, even after having my son, I read about intrusive thoughts, but had never experienced them until I was postpartum. And
Explain that, intrusive
being
thoughts.
aware, what's that?
Explain intrusive thoughts.
Yes. So intrusive thoughts, similar to anxiety, it's these thoughts that flood your mind of the worst possible scenario, um, how things can go incredibly wrong. It's thoughts of things that are not present, that are not real, that are not factual, that are not happening. Um, but you allow these thoughts to kind of take over and consume you. And so I was having intrusive thoughts about fears I had never had prior to having a child. I remember, waiting on my husband to come meet me at the doctor's office and me seeing him. like visioning him getting into a car accident and dying. And I'm like, oh my God, my husband's going to die. We just had this baby. How am I going to explain this to my child? I'm crying in the doctor's office now because I'm imagining the conversation that I have to have with my son to tell him that his father didn't make it. And and I stopped myself and I was like, this is an intrusive thought. This is not real. You cannot give this more power. You know, this is not real. And I think if I wasn't aware of intrusive thoughts, I probably would have lost my mind in that moment and just gave into all of it. But I was able to stop myself. And, you know, that wasn't the last time it happened. There were other moments that I would struggle with them. But I think the awareness of knowing that this is not real. This is something that I am making up in my mind, and this is not going to be the outcome. This is not true. And I was able to kind of let it go.
Thank you for sharing that. I've never really heard the definition of intrusive thoughts, but I think I would win the Oscar.
Did you have them?
Are you kidding? My imagination is so big that I'm constantly thinking of those things. Someone's going to come through that gate with a big gun. They're going to kill us. Oh my God, we're going to crash. We're going to fall off this bridge. We're going to be drowning. I don't remember. Do you pull the window down? Do you smash it? How do you do it? If you, the obsession with falling off a bridge in a car has been with me since I was little, because we used to drive over this bridge to get to this nightclub we used to clean. My dad's going to fall into a low blood sugar attack. I'm not going to be there. Wait, what am I going to do? Constant intrusive thoughts. And I'm telling you, I would beat everyone for Oscars every single year with my intrusive thoughts. They've really kept me prisoner until I started doing these meditations, because the whole goal of the meditations is to change your thoughts and your beliefs. And so it's mismanaged thoughts that are really informing your field and hurting you. And so I'm back in it, and it's feeling so good to be free of them, because the second they come in, it's like a catcher's mitt. I grab it, I throw it out, and I replace it with something I want. And I keep reminding myself that the history, or if you just look back, none of these things have happened. And I've wasted so much time worrying about things that were not real, like you said, instead of creating what I wanted. And that's been a really big game changer for me. It just gives you so much peace. And then if you think about it, Heal Squad, our illnesses are based in fight or flight, all that fear, all that stress. So we're not helping ourselves. We could be drinking every green juice we want and doing all the red light we want, but if we're not controlling what's in between our ears and going into our heart, we're never going to get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that you said it's catching it, throwing it out, and replacing it with something that you want. That is literally the best way to manage intrusive thoughts.
I love it. Nicole, you are amazing. And I love the work that you do with kids. I think it's so important, more than ever, to help kids in these capacities. So thank you for sharing your story and being so vulnerable. And I'm so happy for you that you're pregnant again. And I wish you the best, most amazing experience all the way through. And congratulations on the book. Again, guys, it's called Breaking Generational Silence. We'll put everything in the description of this episode for you guys to find it. Thank you guys, as always, for joining us on Heal Squad today. If you enjoyed this 2-part conversation with Nicole, please share it with a friend or 2 or 3. I know I learned so much, and it makes me want to dive deeper. I'm going to make sure I've got my family tree really on point after this conversation. Be sure, like I said, to pick up a copy of her book, Breaking Generational Silence. It is out now, and you can find out more info on Nicole in the show notes below. Until then, be nice people, make good choices, and be present. Hey, Heal Squad, we have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show, or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.